Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from beautiful central British Columbia, Prince George. And today we got a special guest, Kristen Carder. Kristen, welcome to my show.
Hello, John. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me a little bit about you as to where are you located physically?
I am in Pennsylvania in the US, about an hour outside of Philadelphia. So I'm on the eastern side of Pennsylvania.
Okay, and pretty hot there, right? Right now?
Yes. Yes, we experience all of the seasons here near Philadelphia, and so we are right in the middle of summer, so it's hot and humid. And I'm enjoying it. I have three kids. We go to the pool. It's great. So not a problem.
Beautiful. Global warming has affected us all somewhat throughout the world, actually. British Columbia here, if I look outside, it has been fairly hot here, but today it is raining, which is a good thing. Lots of forest fires in Canada. As you know, even the US gets some of the smoke that comes blowing in from Canada right throughout. I think it is in history there have never been as many forest fires as there are this year in British Columbia. So it's somewhat concerning, and so obviously as we look forward. So we have a number of things in common, in particular as it relates to ADHD. And as you already know, I'm ADHD and have been very vocal about it, in particular in the last number of years, where I believe I was diagnosed when I was 57. I was not diagnosed. I picked up a book in the bookstore. Still don't know why. And not this book, but I was in the bookstore and for some reason picked up this book, and the title of the book was Driven to Distraction, and I have no idea why I picked it up, and it talked about ADHD, and I said, oh my God, that's me, and then I wrote in the book in Dutch because I was born in Holland. Now I finally know who I am. That's and then I was ashamed of it first, because it meant to me that it maybe was a mental issue, and I was building a lumber company and all kinds of other companies, and if I would go to my banker and to negotiate loans and all those kind of things, I would have to say, well, by the way, I should also tell you that I have a mental issue called ADHD, and he would say, well, have a nice day, so potentially. I was concerned about it because there was stigma around it, not much talked about really, and then it took me 5 years before I talked to my doctor, who was a personal friend, delivered our two daughters. And one day I came into his office and he said, John, why are you here? I said, I think I have ADHD. And he said, oh my goodness. And so we looked at it together, and he did some research on it. He said, I think you do too. And so then I was 62 by then. And already quite successful actually in the business. And then another number of years after that, actually in 2008, by then I was already 68 years old. I said to my doc, should I take, because I had been looking at it, Google, and to get more knowledge about it, and should I take medicine? And he said, well, I don't know, some people do. I said, what would you suggest? So he did some research on that. He said, maybe Adderall. I said, well, I didn't know what it was. So he gave me a tube with about 100 Adderall pills, 20 or so, the strength was fairly strong. I used 3 of them, and they didn't do anything for me, so I never used any again. And the reason that I know it was January 2008. They're still in my desk drawer. 97 of them.
Just in case, right?
No, I save everything, so and so that one is still there, so yeah, and so that's kind of who I am. It was not until then, up to then, I was not very successful in school in Holland. I failed grade 3. I failed grade 7 3 times. And then finally they said, what are we going to do with this guy? Should we send him to the mentally challenged school? My parents were very, very good, very supportive. They didn't do that. They said, well, maybe we'll get him a job. So they sent me to a furniture factory, and I became a furniture maker. And then the other part I should tell you about me, it gives you a little bit of background on me that you may not have read in any of the other things that you saw about me before the podcast, is that I was born in 1940 in northeastern Holland during the war years. I still remember from the time that towards the end of the year when I was 3.5 to 4 years old, that things were very, very difficult in the area that we lived. For my mother in particular, it was hard. She had 3 children. I was born in 1940. My sister was 1 year older than me. My brother 2 years older than me. Everybody had a difficult time, especially the winter 2004 to 2005. A lot of people died, in special children and older people that were vulnerable. There was not enough food. It was the hunger winter, and things were very, very difficult. Every morning, us as kids would go out with gunny bags into the railroads and find anything that was edible or burnable to take home. The reason that we did as kids, because the Germans wouldn't shoot us, they would just boot us one to get out of there, and so then we just came back the following day. And so those things were very, very difficult, and obviously we were liberated in northeastern Holland, April the 12th, 1945, by the Canadian Army. It made such an impression on me that I always knew I would go to Canada. It was not if, but when. And I wanted to go when I was 17. They wouldn't let me then. And then I went when I was 24. And then with the dream of building my own lumber mill. And and that was in British Columbia. So I came to Canada. I felt I had been a failure in Holland because I failed in school, I thought, and I wanted to not only go to the land of my heroes and with the dream of building a lumber mill, but I also wanted to prove that I could do things on my own. So I started with nothing. And when I arrived here, about 4 blocks away from here, the Greyhound station, I had 1 suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I had in my pocket exactly $25.47. And so I counted it 3-4 times. That's what I had. Couldn't speak the language, didn't have a job, didn't know a soul. Underneath it would write, my employees made this for me actually, it would write attitude, always avoid the negative, passion, and work ethic. What follows is success. And that still is something that is very much of who I am. And since that time, within a couple of years, I started as a cleanup man. I was a superintendent of a big lumber mill here. Within 10 years, I started incorporating my lumber company. Since that time, I'm just giving you the background, not bragging about anything. It's not about a hoorah, hoorah thing, but more about ADHD, which I call the superpower, is that I have probably 10 companies. We employ about 400 to 500 people, and we're still growing today. And I'm an author and do a number of other things. Wrote a book, 3 books actually, one about ADHD Unlocked, and a number of other books. And in particular, Kristen, that has been important to me, and that's why I thought it's so interesting reading your CV that you sent and your background, is that I felt like a failure, and then it was not until much later that I knew, and I knew now what the key was for me was ADHD, and obviously started already to be successful in business very early, but it really further made me expand into a number of other things, including being an author. I'm also one of the most active podcasters probably in Canada and around the world. And at the same time, the interesting part about it, at 83, I'm also the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America that competed nationally and at the Arnold's in 2018. You know, so that's kind of a little bit of my background. You know, and with ADHD, I really the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've become more active in speaking about it and learning about it and being more active about it and writing my book, but also podcasting and other presentations that I do in different places.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that with me.
So tell me a little bit more about you for our guests that are watching us.
More about me. So as I said, I live near Philadelphia. I have a husband and 3 kids, and I host the I Have ADHD podcast. So I put out a podcast every week about adult ADHD. And from that, I like to say that coaching found me. I didn't realize that I was always meant to be a coach until people started reaching out to me for coaching. And since I had extensive experience working with students with ADHD, I tailored the program that I was working on with students and used it with adults. And now I have the privilege of serving adults all over the world, people who have ADHD and who are really looking to be on a self-development journey, moving forward in their lives, making changes. And it is the joy of my life. I feel so grateful that I get to be in this space and helping people, and especially helping such an underserved community. The adults with ADHD really have kind of blossomed in the last year or two, but prior to, it kind of trending on TikTok in the last couple of years, this has been a really misunderstood and forgotten demographic. And so it's been such a privilege to be able to serve and get the word out about adult ADHD.
Yeah, you feel likely the same as I do, is that when I found out in 1997, when I was already 57 years old and read the book, that I had no idea. And the more I find out about it, and the more I read about it and listen to other people, that I believe the other part about it is that the frequency of occurrence used to be said to be around 8% or so. I believe it is closer to 20% of that, at least in my opinion. There is not a single day that goes by for me. I'm not podcasting only about ADHD. That is part of the podcasting that I do, but becoming more and more active, actually. I do about 3 podcasts a week, and and that is on different topics. But one of them is ADHD, and I become more active in it all the time for all the same reasons as you did, is that I get sought out for it because of being fairly active in it and have written the book about it. And the interesting part about it is that I believe that we are still at the beginning of it becoming known and accepted. I find that there are, as I said earlier, not a day that goes by that I don't encounter people that said, I've never said anything about it because the stigma, but I just want to tell you that I have ADHD, and I believe we're still very, very early stages, and that's why I'm when I read your background, that it was so interesting to see the similarities between yourself and myself. Is that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that ADHD is vastly underdiagnosed. I think there are so many people who have this condition who are walking around not even knowing that this is what they are struggling with. And so I think I'm hoping, excuse me, that as we learn more and as information is more easily accessed and as hopefully the body of research continues to grow, more and more people will be able to access a diagnosis. I think it's such a privilege to be able to be diagnosed. And, once in a while you hear people out in the world saying like, oh, everybody has ADHD, or it's so overdiagnosed, or it's overly medicated. That the research does not show that to be true, and experts like Dr. Russell Barkley often say that it is an underdiagnosed disorder.
Yeah,
I believe. Sure.
Yeah, I'm not medical. I don't have a medical background other than I know me. And, and if I look back, and that's why I gave you a little bit of the background, and I believe it relates to some of the things that you mentioned in your bio that you sent to us, is that part of my background was that, that's why I gave you the background of the 1944-45 and the war years, seeing far too much that I should not have seen. I was affected by PTSD, no question about that. And the other part, got counseling actually for the inner child, and so and then that being part of it, that through counseling can be managed. ADHD does not fall in that category. Either you are, at least in my opinion, or you're not. And I'm pretty much to the point where there is no question in my mind that I'm although I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times, that form of learning or teaching was not suitable for me, and in a lot of cases it's not for those people that are affected by either ADHD or trauma in some form or fashion. And so trauma was also part of my background, that seeing far too many things that we should not have seen during those years of the liberation and all the things that were surrounding that, but there is no question in my mind also, obviously I'm a professional speaker, which was acquired by pure coincidence. Actually, when I came out of my U of A good communicator, I know that already, I can see that, is that when I left school, I was not very good at communicating with people. I was very conscientious of the fact that I was not educated to the extent that most people were, at least not in a formal way. And, and then already when I was here in Prince George and already was successful in my business, everybody would say to me, "You're so successful," and I didn't feel that way. I felt I'd been a failure, partially because of what happened in Holland and the not being successful in school, and because people ask, "Okay, what kind of diplomas do you have?" Well, I don't have any diplomas, so, but so by pure coincidence, somebody, my ex-sister-in-law actually dragged me to a meeting of Toastmasters. And Toastmasters, and she said, "You should go to Toastmasters." And I said, "What are I knew enough about it that they help you in becoming a good speaker as one of the areas." And so I said, "Well, what are they going to do? They're going to ask me questions?" And I said, "If they ask me questions, I'm not going to go there." So she talked me into going there. So I did. And then halfway during the meeting, somebody said to me, well, so John, tell us a little bit about you. And I said, oh my God, so, and anyway, so when I left there that day, I said, I'll never go back here. But I did the following week. And for the next 10 years, I became one of the most active Toastmaster participants, and I'm a DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level of Toastmasters that you can get on, and it became the base for becoming a public speaker, a professional speaker. And, but more than anything, what Toastmaster taught me also is that to create self-confidence and then Toastmasters, and wherever the opportunity presents itself, I talk about it. And the time that I was involved between 1990 and 2000, it cost about $2 a week, the best education that you can possibly get. And it's not only about speaking, it's also become, which is somewhat unique for ADHD, you become a good listener. And that again is very, very critical, and in addition to other things. So so it kind of changed my life. The Toastmastering changed my life, and then becoming knowledgeable about ADHD did the same. And all along the way, and with my entrepreneurship, I became more and more successful in business. Had a number of failures. You have to fall down in order to dust yourself up and stay the course. So the other thing that I did, Kristen, is that I wrote this book, Against All Odds. And it's an autobiography. It's not about hurrah, hurrah, John, but just the opposite, in spite of it all. Going through all the things, the good, the bad, and the ugly that we come across during our lives. I felt I had to write a book about it, and I lived it for 80 years. I thought about writing for 20 years, and it took me 2 years to write it. And with grade 7, not bad, since I grew up speaking dialect. I had to acquire speaking High Dutch, and then barely I got that under control. Then I ended up in Canada and couldn't speak the language, and then become an author. Not bad. And they said to me, "How did you do it?" I say, ADHD. So I wrote this book, and then obviously the next one that I felt strongly about is that the more I got involved in ADHD, which I call a superpower, there is no question in my mind that I could not have done what I did, including building the businesses, including blowing my own horn a little bit here, being a very effective podcaster, and very listened to around the world, as you are, and that all of that was thank you to ADHD in a big way. And then the other part, no different with being active physically in the gym, and then looking for a goal again and becoming an international bodybuilder in 83. And I intend to, then COVID came for 2 years, and then I'm training again to go to the nationals and to the Arnolds actually in 24. By then I'm 84. And so, and then the other book that I wrote, and I'm just going to show you this one as well, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream, that just came out actually on the 19th, and that's the third book, and I'm working on 2 more books actually. So the case that I'm making is simply ADHD. If somebody says, how do you do it? Do all these things. You're podcasting, do about 15 a month. And I think we are at about 440, 450. I think you're 144 actually, or 145. So I could not do that unless I had ADHD. There's no question in my mind about it.
What do you think it is about ADHD that gives you the oomph?
Yes and no. I think that I'm obviously fit, and but I've always been go-go, so I've always been excited, and I've always had a very positive attitude. Even when I was young and I was not very successful in school, I was still quite popular because although I had two me's, the one was an extrovert, the other one was an introvert. I lived in my own life inside of me, and then going outside, I had lots of friends, and and I still do the same today. A lot of people say, I don't know how you do it. I'm usually, if things go difficult, then, we'll just have to pull things together and look at the positive sides and go forward, So, and then the other part that I do, even now at 83, I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed when I get up. And I always kind of look back at, before I walk out of the door, to make sure, maybe it's because I was in the Air Force for 2 years, maybe that's why I do it. But, and then I always feel I'm late. And, I get to work and I'm usually the first one there and the last one to leave. I work probably 12, 13 hours a day. And, and I'm always excited about new things. I'm always, interested. So your question, is that because of, or does that play a part? It likely plays a part. The other one is that that's who I am.
Yeah, I actually don't look at ADHD as a superpower, which I think it's totally fine to have two different opinions about it. Because I see so many people with ADHD struggling, because not everyone has the energy and the capacity and the drive to kind of harness it. I had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Ned Hallowell, who wrote the book Driven to Distraction, and my goodness, what a gem. And he also sees ADHD as a superpower, and I pushed back on him as well, and said, like, hey, what part of this do you feel like is a superpower? Because I see so many people that are struggling, and it is a classified disability in at least in the States. So like, how are we calling a disability a superpower? And one of the points that he made that I really appreciated, and he kind of opened my mind to this a little bit, was that when you have the support, when you have access to a diagnosis and treatment and just even understanding about ADHD, when you have like the drive and the other mental capacity to harness your energy, then you can, he called it, unwrap the gift of ADHD. And I really loved his perspective, because up until then, I was very staunchly anti calling it a gift or a superpower. But I can see how when someone has access to a diagnosis, has access to support, has access to money, has access to, all of the things that allow us to kind of have a leg up, then we can really see how the energy and the drive and the interest-based nervous system part of ADHD can really be an advantage in some ways.
Yeah, interesting. Kristen, I've not talked to the author, although we quoted him in our book and got permission from him. I would like to have an interview with him. I will contact him about it. I kind of looked at the superpower for me was that if you ask me the question, is that the reason why? It is probably part of it, in terms of that I've always already been excited about things. I have this passion, and I'm always looking for other things of interest, and once I see them, I usually pursue them very actively. It becomes a question of where, when I was in school, and if the topics which usually were boring, I was not even there mentally.
Sure.
If you would have asked me an hour, what did they talk about an hour ago, I wouldn't have a clue. And that
Right.
would happen through the rest of my life as well. I could be in settings where things were just at least not of interest to me, and I just block it out. I go to my own world, and that probably is a part of it. And I like what he said in terms of, I didn't read that about that, but of unwrapping the gift. I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. I like it because, for me personally, ADHD was not a gift, it was a hindrance. I mean, I was so debilitated because of my ADHD, and it wasn't until I accessed support and medication and therapy and coaching and got all of that support that then I was able to thrive. Then I was able to create a successful business. Then I was able to feel like I was living into my purpose. And I think that, I think that it's just really important for us to like encourage people to continue to pursue. Like if you have a suspicion that maybe you do have ADHD, like a great first step is just understanding that and reading a book or going to see a doctor and really figuring out, is this a part of you? Because it does give you so much power when you know what you're dealing with.
So I understand it, and I agree with you, is that for me, up to the time that I was 57, I really thought I was a failure. I did.
Exactly.
So ADHD didn't do anything for me. I didn't have a clue about it until I picked
Yes.
up that book. So everything
Yes.
changed after that.
Yes.
Save and accept what I already started to do before that. That was 1997, when I was 57, when I picked up the book. I already was part of Toastmastering, and it made me more interested in other things. Up to that point, I was in a cycle of, no matter how, already I was quite successful in business. Everybody said, oh, you're so sick. I didn't feel that way. I felt I
Right.
had been a failure.
Exactly.
And only then, all of a sudden, it started unlocking and it became clear. Like what I wrote in the book in Dutch, I still have the book. Now I finally know who I am in Dutch because I was ashamed of it, right? And so the reason that I look at things that way now, and I see it over and over and over again, where I interact with people, that I made a presentation here, a keynote presentation, and the night before I was sitting in a hotel, and a fella came up to me and he said, I know you're having dinner here, but just by myself. He said, after you're done, can you come and talk to me? I'm sitting down there. I said, sure. And he said, I'm going to be at your keynote tomorrow. And so after my dinner, I went to him, and he said, I had sent out quite a few of these books. I sent to a number of people that I think should have those for free. And he said, I received one of these books from you, and so my son is 15 and he's really struggling with, I believe, ADHD, and we read your book together. Can you believe that?
I can't believe it. I mean, I'll just sit here and cry with you.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful.
And Kristen, this happens on a daily basis virtually, that and so that's why what I'm saying to them is that what it means to me, I'm not saying that should apply to everybody, but even understanding it is not a deficiency, it is not a
Yes.
liability. If we call it anything, let's call it an asset, that if you can, like what the doc said, unwrap it, understand it, listen to people like you and me and others, then all of a sudden you don't have to be ashamed.
I so resonate with what you're saying, John, and I'm so grateful to you for sharing these stories because I believe that there is immense privilege that comes with being able to be diagnosed.
Right.
And circling back to our conversation just a little bit ago, wait, I just completely lost my thought. Hang on just a second.
Yeah.
Circling back to our conversation, what was our conversation? Okay, well, I won't circle back then because I don't remember what I was going to say. So, but knowing that you're diagnosed and knowing that the reason why you're struggling is not because you're a bad person. The reason why you're struggling is not because you have character flaws. The reason why you're struggling is not because you're a failure. The reason why you're struggling is because your brain works differently and you learn differently. And if you can understand that and harness that and lean into that, there is literally nothing you can't do. And so I totally resonate with what you're saying. And I just want to say, there are more and more people being diagnosed in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. I have people in my program who are in their 70s. And I love it because think about our parents. It's an inheritable disorder, right? So probably one or more of your parents or uncles or whatever, somebody in your family likely had it and passed it on.
Absolutely.
We're the ones that had the privilege of being diagnosed.
Exactly.
We're the ones that get to understand. We're the ones that are not thinking there's something wrong with me because I
Correct.
know exactly what's going on. And I just
Right.
feel like the fact that we exist right now in 2023, you in your 80s, me in my 40s, like we are the luckiest humans because we get to understand this about ourselves.
And I love it, and then sharing it with others and helping others, like in this book, when I wrote it, and it's on all the major medias, and I'm going to send you a copy of it, of all those books, actually.
I love that.
And
Thank you.
So when I wrote it, from ADHD with grade 7 that had to acquire to speak English. The amazing part about it is I'm a very good writer and always was, and I'm very good at numbers. So when I wrote this, I was sitting on a flight from Vancouver to Victoria. It was a relatively short flight, but there was a fellow that sat next to me, and this is about a year and a half ago, and he said, "You remember me?" I said, "I do in a way," but he said, his name is Tom Bromer, and he said, "I'm the Vice President Academics of the British Columbia Institute of Technology." And he said, "We talked about you were writing a book, and that was against all odds." And I said, it's all done." And I said, "I'll send you a copy of it." And then I said to him, "I'm writing a book on ADHD, and I call it ADHD Unlocked." And I said, I'm nearly done with it, and I like to get your opinion on it. And and he said, "Okay, send me a transcript before get it print ready, right? Yeah, we are their own distributors and do all that stuff, And so, and then the following week again he was there, and I thought, and I was sitting in 4A, he was sitting in 1F on the far corner. And I had to get his attention. I said, Tom, and all the people said, "Well, what does this guy want?" I said, "Stop at the gate. I need to talk to you." And he said, "Okay, I'll do that." And there he was. And I said, "I'm writing the book. It's nearly done. It's going to be ADHD Unlocked. I'll send you a copy. I need you," because he had told me that they're working on something they call micro certification. I had never heard of it, but the more he told me about it, the more I said, that's what I need, because the book, I nearly had it finished. I wrote about all the things, interviewed a number of people, which you will find in the book. The foreword is actually written by a friend of mine, is Dr. Tracy Lotz, who is a medical doctor, emergency surgeon, ADHD. And several examples of that. But the book is good, I believe, you can open the book anywhere and start reading, and then go a number of pages further, start reading. So it's one of those books written especially for ADHD. I said to him, something is missing in the book, because I'm telling who I am. I tell them what happened. A lot of other people are interviewed, and it kind of lays out ADHD as it affects a number of people, including me. The problem that I'm having is saying, okay, John, I like it. What now? I want to know what now. That's what is missing. And that's what I said to Tom. I like what you're saying about micro certification, is because the problem I had in school, that I have to sit there for 4 years. Most of the stuff they're talking about, I'm not interested in, so it goes not even in and out. It just bypasses me. I haven't got a clue what they're talking about. It. No wonder I fault. So micro certification is something is being looked at much closer now for people that are affected not only ADHD but affected by trauma and a little number of other things that are directly, indirectly related to this. Micro certification is where you want to learn a trade, whatever that may be nursing, may it be, whatever it is. Focus on the core issues that the person has to acquire. That then will create their interest, because once I'm interested in the topic, then I'm very, very good at acquiring the skill sets. And then the other stuff, add those gradually, but at least I still have the interest in the core issues. That helps our workforce, and we are looking at that now closer in terms of the academic people that are looking at, are we effective in teaching people that are either ADHD, affected by trauma, and a lot of people, First Nations comes to mind here, and probably in the States to a certain extent, a lot of people are affected by trauma and subsequently are slow learners. And I believe what I say with this book, it is not only for those that are ADHD. I believe that everybody should understand ADHD and what it means, as well as slow learners, and learning or understanding all things around that, because there is no question that you will encounter those individuals either in your family or in your circle of friends or in the wider workplace that you're involved in, because they are different. And by understanding it, it makes interaction much easier. Plus knowing about it, since I believe it affects probably 20% of the population, it makes the much more understood by the general public. So to know about it is important. So what I did with Tom Romer, he wrote a piece in this that deals with the issue of micro certification, is saying, look at the whole schooling system. By putting people for 4 years in a program where only 6 months of it really deal with the core issue, is probably needs review, where it can be much more effective to, we need skill sets, is a major shortage of skill sets, and it probably will address the whole issue of teaching and learning and acquiring skills.
I love that. I think that's amazing. I'm curious, if you don't mind, I would love to ask you about trauma, because I've been doing a deep dive in the last 2 years on complex trauma and my own experience with a lot of trauma in my childhood and adolescence. And I'm curious where you see the difference between ADHD and trauma, because that's something that I'm just kind of like synthesizing and working out in my brain now, understanding that people who have experienced trauma and complex trauma, their brains didn't develop properly, just like ADHDers' brains are different. And the prefrontal cortex in those who experience complex PTSD is smaller and affected, and just like in those with ADHD. So like complex trauma and ADHD seem to really have so many similarities as far as the symptoms, right, that they present. Obviously different causes. And I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on that.
But that's why it was important for me to kind of give you the intro when I talked about I grew up in Holland in 1940 to 1945, and then in a family where my dad, he was in the Dutch Air Force, or the Dutch Army, was caught in the bombing of Rotterdam, and they didn't know he was dead or alive for 5 years. And so there was a mother with 3 kids, and so that it was not until my late 40s, when I was in counseling about issues in our relationship, which were all resolved and all that kind of stuff. But when the counselor said to us, my then partner or girlfriend, then now wife, talked about, he said, I would suggest to you that John meets with me talking about the inner child. And I had no idea what it was, but it was trauma that, the fear of losing, the only parent. There was only one, and, the fear of that, was the inner child. And I think I was in my late 50s when we got counseling for that. On my own, very emotional.
Yeah.
But it made a difference. And then the other one, PTSD, was seeing far too much that I should not have seen, because that was people getting shot, and a neighbor of us. Far too many details that I don't want to talk about, but still gets me emotional, actually.
Yeah.
But those things, like the inner child, you can get counseling for. I didn't understand it, because the counseling done by a professional counselor is, to deal with that little boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where the difference is, probably, Kristen, is that could be done, at least dealt with in a certain way, through counseling. PTSD likely falls in the same category, although I'm not an expert or don't claim to be a medical expert, but falls in the same category, talking about, I'm fairly vocal about every year around the 11th of November, Liberation Day, I talk to at least 4 schools here, 2 down the coast, 2 in the north, about being 2 minutes of silence as to why, kind of important for me to talk about it, to tell people about it, especially young people.
Yeah.
But ADHD falls into a different category, because I believe I was born ADHD. And although slow learning or inattentiveness and some of the factors are probably similar, that's why I say, even with this book, it's not only for ADHD but also for slow learners affected by trauma, or PTSD maybe, or some of the other issues, so I kind of look at myself and I say, boy, I had quite the package that I brought, and then, but I did not really, the whole thing didn't really unlock until Toastmasters 1992-2000. It gave me self-confidence, but I still felt like a failure until I read that book, or picked up that book and looked at it, the superpower did not come from if he refers to it, but I've not even fully read the book, other than parts of it, and but I'm absolutely convinced, at least as it applied to me, I want to make sure that the stigma of that it is a liability or a deficiency of some sort is wrong. It is a gift that, and I like what he said, that if you unwrap it and you become aware of it and listening to you, me, others, that it's just at the early stages now. This is just all starting, and
agreed.
And that's why it is so important for you and me to have the discussion and others. And I'm sure we will keep talking about it together and encountering each other, right? So, yeah.
I would love that. Yeah, absolutely.
So as you now kind of look forward then, following on that particular, you will you do your counseling on a one-to-one basis, or is it also online, your counseling that you do?
So just to clarify, I coach. So I'm not a licensed counselor, but
Right.
I am a certified life coach, and I do it all online. And it's not one-to-one. I did start out working one-to-one, but the demand for services far exceeded my capacity to have the time to help the people that needed help. And so I created a group program in January of 2020,
Okay.
not realizing that the entire world was going to be shutting down just a couple months after that. And so, yeah, it's actually been wonderful because it's all online and I'm able to serve people all over the world. And so it's a group coaching program. It's a monthly membership, and it's really pretty affordable as far as coaching goes. I mean, it's like very affordable as far as coaching goes, which is wonderful because I want to be able to help as many people as possible. So I coach in there. I have a couple other certified amazing coaches that coach in there as well. And essentially our entire mission is just to help as many adults with ADHD as possible begin to understand themselves, accept themselves, know who they truly are, and begin to like walk in their gifting, walk in their potential, and really, I mean, it's kind of cliche, but like the life that you've always wanted is available, I believe, when you have the access and support, and you're willing to feel some very deep feelings. I really appreciate, John, you sharing just about all of the inner child work that you've done, and I just want to affirm that I do truly believe that that has lent itself to you thriving, because when we're not willing to face those tender feelings, when we're not willing to really acknowledge the reality of our experience, we do a lot of avoiding.
Right.
We do a lot of dissociating. We do a
Exactly.
lot of hiding. And that is very typical ADHD behavior, right?
Yeah.
And so, we talk about procrastination all the time as being associated with ADHD. And I am convinced that the only way to stop procrastinating is to start feeling your feelings.
Exactly.
Because we procrastinate because we're afraid, we procrastinate because we're bored, we procrastinate because we're dreading something.
Yeah.
And if we're willing to engage with those emotions, if we can learn how to identify and process and feel our emotions, then we can understand why we're procrastinating, and we can figure out how to stop. So, I mean, that's just a small example, but we do a lot of emotional regulation work in my program because I find that adults with ADHD really did not grow up with an emotional language and did not grow up with the ability to understand and soothe and process their own emotions. And emotions fuel our actions. And so if we don't like the actions that we're taking, we need to start getting in tune with our emotions, which I know sounds gross. Like if you're listening to this and you have ADHD, you're probably like, oh, I don't want to do that. But truly it is, I believe it is the key to unlocking that gift. I really do believe that.
I agree with you 100%, Kristen. So, did you want to share your contact potentially for those that may want to sign up to your coaching?
Sure.
And we have people, as you have, watching from all around the world, but in particular North America. So if you can share that with us, then that would be very good.
Sure, of course. Yeah. So you can go to my website, IHaveADHD.com.
Okay.
And on that website, you can learn a little bit more about me. You can access the podcast. I have a free podcast, and that's, on all the podcast platforms, just like John's, I'm sure. And then my coaching program is on that platform as well. And that is called Focused. And yeah, IHaveADHD.com is a great place to find me. I like to hang out on Instagram. So if you like social media, I'm at I Have ADHD Podcast. And that's it.
Excellent, Kristen. Anything else that comes to mind?
I just want to thank you so much for this conversation. I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm so grateful to have been here with you.
I will send you the 3 books that we have here, and then at the same time, we have to stay in touch, So the podcast, we usually put it out fairly quickly. It probably will come out tomorrow morning, I would think, Andrew.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we always, in a pretty well book.
Goodness.
Yeah, I've been on a podcast and I say, okay, when are you going to make it available? And you say, about 3 or 4 weeks. I said, are you kidding me? So we're very efficient. We have a very, very good team. Andrew will get it out of the door tomorrow. And then, and at the same time, stay in touch, Kristen. It was delightful to have our discussion and so many similarities between us. So it was my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kristen. Take care.